Oh my gosh, here we are. Finally, I have been teasing this podcast for weeks, maybe even months to you guys. And thank you for coming to check out From the Ground Up podcast with me. This is going to be where I get to tell you guys everything. I get to tell you guys about my experience as a business owner, a business founder, a team leader, and ultimately a pelvic floor physical therapist who does things differently and, in my opinion, better, and has set out to really change the game of pelvic health. And I'm just so dang excited to be launching this show, to learn about my methods and what has made my practice, Genesis, stand out over the years, and how we're getting our patients all of these incredible results. The list goes on and on and on. But bottom line, I love to chit chat. And so why not start a podcast and tell you guys all about it? And that's what we're doing here. We're going to talk about things like the foot. We're going to talk about things like the rib cage. We're going to talk about things like Kegels. And if you've followed me for any amount of time so far, you know my disdain for them. And we're going to talk about why that is. And we're going to talk about what to do instead and what that means for your patients. As much as I want to talk about the clinical side, and as much as we are, you simply can't take the clinical side and your methodology and how you treat your patients and separate it from your practice and how you market yourself and brand your team and brand your practice. They're one and the same. And we're going to talk about how saying no to Kegels essentially is how I build a Waitlist brand, and how I built my practice, Genesis, and how I've grown my team, and how that's made clinicians want to join my team, and how that's made referring providers want to send us patients, and how that's made patients want to come and tell their friends to come, and made us grow our Instagram following, and just all the things. It really, really boils back to we took a stance, a hard one, and it was no Kegels. And that's fast forward now, 5.5 years later, this is where we're at. And so I want to tell you guys that story. We're going to start there today. So let's get into it, you guys. My first podcast. Here we go. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're here. My business and my practice has really grown far beyond what I ever imagined. Anyone who knows me or has asked me my story, I always say I accidentally did this. I accidentally built a multimillion-dollar company. That's crazy. My coach would slap me right now because she hates it whenever I say that this was an accident. What I mean by that is whenever I launched Genesis, I didn't launch it thinking, oh, I'm going to have multiple clinics across the Metroplex, and I'm going to expand across state lines, and we're going to build out an entire virtual side of the company where we're helping people across the globe. And that's what I mean whenever I say it was an accident, because what I did, really, looking back, was I launched a practice solo myself. I was renting one room in a midwife clinic. Shout out Adrian, love you. And I started and I showed up, and all I had to go on was, I'm a physical therapist. I have an orthopedic background, and I'm going to do this thing specializing in the pelvic floor, and I'm going to do it my way, and we're going to see what happens. That's kind of what happened. So when I say it was an accident, what I mean was I didn't set out planning for it to turn into everything it's turned into so far. What I have since learned along the way, as I've launched this thing, as I've in the beginning kind of reacted to the growth and the traction that we were picking up, and then shifted into building on purpose is what we've shifted to. And now we're really building this thing on purpose and strategically and all the things to really reach our vision and our mission. What I've learned along the way, when you zero in on what is one thing that you as a company or you as a provider do well, do better, honestly better than anyone else to help your clientele, when you know that thing and you have clarity on it and you really zero in on it, that becomes your fuel, right? That's like the gasoline to put on your fire. And that's the thing that makes your brand magnetic. That's the thing that makes clients want to work with you. That's the thing that makes the providers want to refer to you. And that's the thing that makes therapists or clinicians want to join your team. And it's because you have your thing, you believe in it, It's the one thing you do differently and better than the other people, right? It's not that the other people suck. It's that you have your thing and you are incredible at it and you believe in it. And that is how you're going to help people. And then you keep showing up and you keep saying it for literally the rest of time. It never ends. So that's why you better believe it. You better love it and it better light you up, because what I'm going to tell you is you got to never stop saying it. And that is how you build a Waitlist brand. So when thinking about my clinical hill that I'll die on is what I call it, essentially. This one thing that Genesis does differently and does better than anyone else is that we treat the pelvic floor without Kegels. Kegels are not necessary. They are not helpful. We do not need to be integrating them into our care with our patients. That is the amount of conviction in that statement I said, just the very absolute that I have had since I started Genesis, basically. And it freaked me out in the beginning because I'm like, all of these courses are teaching us how to evaluate our patient's pelvic floor by their ability to do a Kegel. How strong is that Kegel? Can they let that Kegel go? Can they hold it for 10 seconds, 10 times? Can they do it? How many quick Kegels can they do in a 10-second time? Like all of these things, the entire evaluation process and the entire treatment process was built around this idea that our patient's ability to do a Kegel exercise or, just a Kegel or multiple Kegels told us things about their leaking or their prolapse or their pelvic pain that should guide our treatment process. And then our treatment process should involve Kegel exercises. Okay, so from the get-go, me with an orthopedic PT background, someone who had never done a Kegel in her life, if I was in orthopedic land, I would never just give someone ab squeezes. You're going to come to me with low back pain and I'm just going to be like, okay, lay on the table and squeeze your abs over and over. Absolutely not. I just from day one was like, this is so dumb. Now, I will be honest, and as a new pelvic floor PT, I had that little nagging voice in my head that was like, this is so dumb. And they're telling me to do it, so I'm going to do it and I'm going to try it. I did what the courses told me, what the research at the time showed or whatever from the 1940s, right? Literally research from the 1940s. My patients just were not getting better. And so I very quickly in the early days, like I'm talking like within weeks of starting Genesis and treating a bunch of pelvic health patients, hard stop, no more Kegels. We're going to go a different route. We're going to do it different. We're going to do it better. And I'm actually going to change these women's lives. That was the moment really early on in Genesis that I was like, this is what I'm going to be known for, is changing the game of pelvic health and just taking a stance against the way everyone's always said to do it, because it honestly only gets people like half better, if that. And sometimes it makes them worse. Okay. So why Kegels? Why are they not necessary? Why are they not helpful? It all boils down to the fact that this is not how the pelvic floor works functionally anyway, right? Just because the pelvic floor muscles have the ability to contract voluntarily, like sure, you can sit there and you can squeeze your pelvic floor and you can let it go. Do you want me to clap for you? Like, yay, you. That doesn't mean that when you're out on a run or when you're holding your toddler and then your patient goes to sneeze, it doesn't mean that the pelvic floor is going to do what it needs to do in that moment. When we really zoom out, the ultimate reason is the pelvic floor is not made to work voluntarily, even though it can. The pelvic floor is made to work responsively, to anticipate what our patients are going to be doing, and to respond accordingly, and to just respond to the demand that is put on it, whether it's a sneeze, whether it's a deadlift, whether they are rock climbing, whether they're 2 weeks postpartum picking up their baby out of the crib. Like, it doesn't matter. The pelvic floor muscles are made to anticipate what you're about to do and respond accordingly, and they're made to kind of recalibrate in real time. None of that should be when we're thinking about it. So that was where my hang up was I was like, why am I teaching my patients to squeeze and relax their pelvic floor at various times when this is not how it's going to work functionally anyway? That is what I built my treatment method on from the beginning, when it was just me. And since then, that is what the Genesis brand And now what we call our Genesis method, that is what everything has been built on. Okay. So over the past 5.5 years, every single thing that we have done in our marketing, in our messaging, in our treatment method, in when we're talking to other providers that, we want to refer patients to us, we are explaining that we do things differently at Genesis, and it's getting better results for our patients. And this is what that means. We're looking at them from a functional lens. We're zooming out. We know that the pelvic floor, whenever it is dysfunctional, so whenever there's leaking, prolapse, pain, anything like that, the pelvic floor is a victim to a dysfunction somewhere else in the body. Okay. And that just happens to be where we're seeing the breakdown. It's not that the pelvic floor is not dysfunctioning. It is. It's just not because the pelvic floor is weak or tight. The pelvic floor is tight because of something else in the body, because of a foot that doesn't move, an ankle that doesn't move, because of a pelvis that can't internally rotate, because of a rib cage that is stiff and can't expand front to back or side to side. There is some reason that the pelvic floor is tight or presenting weak, right? There is some reason, even if it truly is weakness, because I know that the pro-Kegel people, they're going to say, yeah, but what about when the pelvic floor is actually weak? I'm like, okay, why is it weak? It's not because they are not voluntarily squeezing their pelvic floor all day long. It's literally because the length tension relationship of the pelvic floor muscles at the bottom of the pelvis is not optimized to get a concentric orientation and contract at the right time when it should. It's not because the patient needs to be squeezing to high heaven for the rest of time. That is the clinical hill I will die on, you guys. Is literally they are not functional and they are not necessary. We do not need to be prescribing Kegels in any way, shape, or form to our patients. There is another way. And that is my entire methodology. The other way, the different way, the better way. And what I'm going to be teaching you guys for the literal rest of time, because I love this stuff. Part of my story is that I launched in the fall of 2019 in October. And by January of 2020, my 3 treatment days were booked solid. Like full. I was adding a 4th day. And by a couple months later, that 4th day was full. I was adding a 5th. By the spring of 2020, right before literal March 2020, right before that, I had already made the decision to look at hiring people. That is insane growth. From October, how many months is that? October, November, December, January, February, March. So 6 months, half a year. Literally, my 5 treatment days were full and I was looking at hiring. And it all comes back to the fact that I had this insanely strong stance on a belief that at the time, and still is a little bit, ooh, why is she saying that? That's so absolute. And that's not what some of the other people say. And that's not what the research says and all of this stuff. And because I had that conviction from the early on, and then because I really made it stand out and had this idea that really stood out from a clinical methodology perspective, that made me and Genesis stand out in the market. Picture yourself as a patient for a second. You've tried other pelvic floor therapists. You've been to the doctors. You've been to the OBGYN. You've been to the urogyn. You've been to the pelvic pain. Like you've been to all the people, and everyone is kind of saying the same thing. Everyone's kind of saying like, your pelvic floor is a little bit weak and here's a Kegel exercise handout. Or maybe, you went to a pelvic floor therapist, they referred you to a pelvic floor therapist and they gave you pelvic floor exercises, quote unquote, which is just another way to say Kegels. Okay. Maybe they had you doing it when you do like a bridge or a bird dog or whatever it is, but it all boiled down to contract the pelvic floor here, relax the pelvic floor there. Okay. So again, put yourself in the patient perspective. This has been your experience. Then you come across the Genesis Instagram and I'm over here saying the reason you haven't gotten all the way better is because people are telling you to do Kegels. And you're just like, the heavens open up and you're like, there is the answer I'm looking for. And it's because it was a different perspective that I believe so wholeheartedly and that I said with conviction in every single thing I do. That is the reason that patients found me and found Genesis, essentially. And that's why they continue to, because our message is the same today as it was in fall 2019. That is a huge reason that patients were flocking to me and then to Genesis as we grew is that we stood out clinically. We have a different way of doing things, a better way that we promise them is going to help them, right? And I know it's a little bit like, ooh, like we can't make promises of like treatment outcomes. And it's like, I'm not saying I promise you that in 6 sessions, you're going to not be leaking. What I'm saying is that I can help you. And helping you looks different depending on the patient presentation. Helping you might mean that everything I give you makes you symptom-free in 6 visits. Or it might mean that I know a collaborating provider to pull in and send you to and collaborate with and help you. Or it might mean that I know some lifestyle modifications to tell you to do and make, and that helps you, right? The ultimate promise is that Genesis can help you because we do things differently here. And frankly, better. Standing out clinically with this approach and this conviction from the get-go, every single day, all day. Honestly, I used to be on Instagram all the time talking about this, you guys, when I had more time in the early days of Genesis. That is what got patients in the door and made us stand out for providers too, because providers are sick of sending their patients who are complaining of pelvic floor dysfunction to these other places or to these programs or to the MCELA chair. And their patients are like, either it didn't help, maybe got a little better, or yeah, it helped. And then 6 months later, my symptoms came back, right? Providers want to help their patients too. They just didn't know what the options were. So then they're seeing me and they're seeing Genesis out here like, we're different. We don't do Kegels. And this is why it's better. And this is why it's helping our patients, right? And so not only did it help patients flock to us, it helped providers refer to us a lot. Us being clear on our methodology and on our conviction is what really gave those patients and those providers the trust to kind of leave what they were trying at the time, or if they weren't actively trying things, if they were so jaded because they had been to 2 other pelvic floor therapy places and it just didn't work. Now they're seeing this and they're like, I'm going to give it another try. I'm going to give it one more try. Right. And that's my ideal client, frankly, is the person who's tried everything and it's not worked. They come to Genesis and we can help you. The patient never would have found us if I was not so from the get-go vocal and loud and proud about my belief. When you have a belief that you feel so strongly about, that you're talking about, that is what will make you stand out to patients and to providers. But you have to keep showing up and you have to keep saying it. So you have to have your belief, your conviction that you believe wholeheartedly about your practice, the service you provide. That belief is what's going to make you stand out to patients, to providers, to the world, right? That shows why you're different and why you're better. And then you have to keep showing up and you have to keep saying it. You can't just slap a banner on your website or in your Instagram bio and be like, we don't do Kegels. Like, please have that. And you have to show up day in and day out. And this is the part that people either don't want to believe or it scares them away, or I can't put my finger on it, but people just, the idea of showing up and saying the same thing over and over and over, week after week, month after month, literally year after year. Catch me in 10 years and I'm going to be saying decade after decade. That freaks people out because I don't know if it's that they think they're going to get bored or that they just think it's going to annoy people. Y'all, if you were listening and you have followed me for any amount of time, you have been hearing me the entire time that you have followed me talk about how much I loathe Kegels. And you're not sick of it yet because you're here at the podcast listening to me. So your ideal client will find you if you have your conviction and your thing, and if you keep showing up and saying it. If you truly believe in it and you think this is the thing that's going to help people, you're going to have no problem talking about it till the cows come home. Okay, there's my Texan saying for you for the day. I mean, that is like the piece of this puzzle that is going to move the needle. Because you can have your belief and your conviction. Sure, you can believe it with all your heart. It can be the thing that gets you out of bed in the morning, and it can be your why and like yada, yada, yada. And it can be the thing that makes your brand stand out to the patients and to the providers to refer. But if you're not saying it, how are they ever going to hear it and how are they ever going to find you? So you literally have to show up in every avenue on social media, in your emails, in how you talk to like potential referral partners, in how you talk to your patients when they come into the clinic, and what your website said. Like, it has to be everywhere and be said over and over and over for you to even get your message out there. If you don't say it, how are they going to hear it? That truly is the thing that moved the needle the most, is just showing up day after day, week after week, month after month. So you got to do it, y'all. You got to put in the work. Who would have thought? Being a business owner, being a clinician, building your caseload, it's going to take a little bit of work. Having a strong belief, a strong conviction in something that you just know with all your heart and with all your mind that you believe in, that is going to help your people. Like, this is the one thing that is going to help my people. And then repeating that thing day after day after day, week after week after week, and just being about it. Like, be about it. Be all about it. That one thing that sets you apart, that moves the needle for your patients, that changes the world. That's a big thing, but we're out here to change the game, y'all. Okay? You got to be about your thing, and you got to say it 1,000,000 times. And then once you get to number 1,000,000, you say it 1,000,000 more. You're never going to stop. That is what's going to build a loyal following, is your patients that come in the door and they keep coming back year after year because they know, oh, like, I can go to Genesis after my second baby now. You know, like, you don't have to worry about constantly getting all these new patients in the door because you've built kind of this brand that your current patients know and love and trust, and they're going to keep coming back. You're going to keep getting referrals from your trusted referral sources because they are hearing your consistent messaging over and over. Their patients that they're sending are getting results. So you have to have this conviction, this big idea that you believe in. You have to show up every single day. You have to say it to the world, blast it everywhere that you talk about. That is what will build a Waitlist brand. That is the biggest needle mover, is to have that conviction and never stop saying it and believe that what you do is different and better and can help people. That's truly how you're going to build your Waitlist brand, how you're going to build your practice. That's how you're going to attract people to come work with you, right? Like, I have a team of over 20 women, y'all. People just they just want to come work at Genesis. And it's because people want to be a part of something that matters and something that's changing the game. People want to be a part of the why, not the what and the how. So much more where that came from in the coming episodes. Don't you worry. Ultimately, have your conviction and say it to the world over and over and over, never stop. And that is what is going to build your brand. Thank you guys so much. You tuned in for my very first podcast episode. I hope it was everything you dreamed of and more. Coming up in the coming episodes, we're going to dive deep into things like the foot and the pelvic floor connection. We're going to talk about the rib cage and how its dynamic movement will influence the pelvic floor and its function. We're going to talk about Kegels. We're going to go there, dive a lot deeper into what it really means to look at the pelvic floor functionally. We're going to talk about plenty of patient stories and insights and experiences that I've had in my treatment methods. And I'm going to go deep into building my brand, building my culture, building my team that truly is out here changing the game of pelvic healthcare. We're going to go into all of that stuff. The fun stuff, the crazy stuff, the hard stuff. You're going to hear it all from the Ground Up podcast. And I am so excited to have you. So if you guys wouldn't mind just doing me a favor, this would be so awesome and make me smile so big. If you could just take a screenshot of listening to this episode and just put it in your stories and tag me at Dr. Becky Pelvic PT. That would make my day. It would absolutely make my day. And if you want to learn more about my methods, check out my free guides from the ground up and from the top down, both available in the show notes. Let's change the game.